everyone, welcome to another Overrated Film Saturday, and today I'm going to be exploring a film that I actually saw over the past weekend, or at least this weekend, um, while I was pretty busy uh, as well. Had time to sit down and look into this one. And this is actually an interesting film because although I think a lot of people, especially the movie-going community, is probably not have heard of this film, there seems to be a lot of critical praise from uh, online critics and people who are sort of within that space as far as movies are concerned, and they seem to give it fairly high ratings. I think from what I've seen, it's like 80 something on Metacritic, which is pretty high to get on Metacritic, and it's also got a 90 on Rotten Tomatoes. Um, and I honestly think this film was pretty bad. It wasn't impressive, I think, at all. And I think a lot of the praise that it is sort of getting, at least from the critics, is the fact that it is somehow new in that we haven't seen sort of horror film structured in the way this one is. Um, but to be honest, I think there was a lot within this film that was done very poorly. And I think definitely needed some improvement on. So let's talk about The Witch. Ah, yes, The Witch. This, I think, came out, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a couple months ago. I'm not sure exactly how long ago, but it's been out for some time. And I initially heard it from someone that I knew that it was actually really good and really impressive. And I thought, okay, all right, then there must be something interesting here because usually you don't hear about witches films. And oftentimes when you hear about witches, they're usually done in a more satirical way. They're not really done in a way that's really all too scary. Except maybe if you count Blair Witch Project. But I mean, beyond that, there hasn't been that much exploration of witches. It seems like a lot of the times witches are sort of downplayed, and they're usually done in either kind of more drama-centered pieces like The Crucible, or they're done comedically like in Hocus Pocus and, things like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, things like that where it's definitely not taken to a level of horror. And here it's presented in that context. Um, but it is done pretty badly. And it's unfortunate because the premise within and of itself sounds interesting, but the way they ultimately execute the premise is really what drives this film down for me and what I think makes it really unenjoyable to watch. So let's see what issues there are. First off, the premise of this film, again, like I've said before, is not really that bad. You have this pilgrim family who sort of live in isolation. They sort of build their own kind of little cottage in the middle of the forest somewhere in the United States, and they sort of live off of the land there. And unfortunately, they end up sort of being a little bit strained when they can't raise the crops right. But the thing about this film is that what really drives it down is the fact that throughout most of the time, you really don't ultimately see anything happening. There is way too much talk. There is hardly any context given to the characters. Like, you really do not care about these people all too much. They're pretty sort of standard run-of-the-mill type characters that it ultimately don't end up really impacting anything for the better. I mean, it seems like, for example, they have a dad who is really bad at really living out this pilgrim lifestyle. Like, he can't shoot his gun properly. He can't raise the crops. He's experiencing failure after failure after failure. And you'll see how kind of the wife is like all depressed about this and how she ultimately wants to go back to England, and you just, I mean, it really doesn't give all too much as far as characters are concerned. There's nothing genuinely likable about them or anything really all too interesting about them, you know, because they constantly goof up. Um, and really, what gets them into this mess with the witch is this stupid little boy um, who ultimately goes into the forest because supposedly this baby was captured. One of the babies that they had that was part of the family was captured by a witch. Even though initially they think it was a wolf, at least some of the family I think thought it was like a wolf or something. And you know, and throughout he's kind of behaving sort of, you know, really creepily around his sister. Um, you know, he's acting very bizarre. And then once he encounters the witch, you know, it really ends up screwing the whole family over because um, the whole family ends up being affected by it, and you'll sort of see within the film how it happens. But really, I think the problem with this film is, again, the fact that these characters just don't have anything likable going for them. These are not, you know, characters you really want to root for and really want to see them get out or figure out the situation or what's going on. And that's, I think, a huge problem, especially when the characters sort of get into these messes um, and, you know, they do kind of do stupid things. And this is what's, I think, again, frustrating with a lot of other horror films is the fact that we don't have any genuinely interesting characters. And hence, there is no really real horror. Um, so that's a big problem. The dialogue is also in older English, so it's kind of difficult to understand and follow. Um, and even the conversations the characters do have is very lacking of substance. I mean, it's really nothing important, or you don't really feel like any of these characters really like this family doesn't even really feel like a genuine family for the most part. It's almost like they were kind of stuck together, like they were forced to sort of be together as a family. You know, you almost kind of had this feeling like they were, you know, not really a genuine family. And so, you know, if and that's kind of what brings the film down as well, because is if you want to see this family ultimately somehow succeed, or if you ultimately care, then you know you want to sort of root for them as a unit, and they kind of didn't really function as a unit well to begin with. Um, so again, it really suffers from this, and one of the worst things this film suffers from is the fact that you have the title, okay, The Witch. Guess how many scenes you get to see of a witch? Of an actual witch, okay? Like maybe three scenes where you actually see an actual witch. And even the scenes are so short and minute that they are completely um, lacking of any substance or value. And this is really what makes me frustrated when going and watching this film, is the fact that there is hardly anything with witches in it. It's primarily about this family being paranoid about witch, not about the witch. So it's just so stupid to just sit and watch this family who's not entertaining, not engaging, not um, in any way, shape, or form enjoyable to watch, and ultimately not seeing, you know, anything of progress really happening throughout. You know, they just end up getting more paranoid, and the ending is so strange, doesn't really make a whole lick of sense, and is kind of stupid. You know, that you were just, by the end, you were just like, wow, really? Like, what did I just watch? Like, what was the point of this movie? Um, so, yes, I think had there been more focus on the witch, had then these characters been a lot more engaging, and yes, obviously you can have some characters mess up or do something stupid. But when it's to the point of, clearly doing stuff that, you really shouldn't be doing, I mean, I could have played into the whole idea of maybe that they were starving and that they needed food or something, and they'll try to go find food in the forest or something like that. I could see that happening, or just those motivations would, I think, have made a lot more sense than trying to find some kid that has been long gone. Um, and we barely even see, like, we get one scene with that baby and then that baby's gone. Um, so again, I think, just the fact that these characters don't have anything going for them, they're not fun or entertaining or engaging to watch, they're not likable. Um, the fact that we have this drained out plot that really goes nowhere and that ends nowhere. The fact that we don't have any witches really throughout the entirety of the film. The fact that they try to comment on things that are supposedly somehow edgy, but just come off as creepy and kind of stupid, and really not as well thought out. That's just really what puts this film, I think, in the coffin for me. And I think is really what drives this film really down significantly. I mean, had it focused on the family trying to maybe survive somehow and then end up being exposed to a witch, had the witch played more of a significant role within the plot, it would have been a lot more interesting. But instead, it's just boring, and it drags. Like, even though this movie's like only roughly an hour and 20 something minutes, it drags for so long. Like, you're just sitting there waiting for something to happen. And this is the problem with this movie. This is one of those films where you just sit and watch and nothing really productive happens. Okay, maybe it's trying to point out certain things that, maybe um, that you kind of have to pay attention to, but at the same time, it doesn't really lead to anything. It doesn't lead to anything productive, or doesn't say anything really, anything new or interesting. It's just the way that it's done is a little bit different than a lot of horror films that we've seen in the past. And I think that has to do with the fact that it does feel very authentic. Like, it does seem like that it is actually taking place around this period in time. But despite its authenticity, that's not enough to sell a film. Like, the film is based on plot, characters, and the way you present the themes. But those three important things do not appear really strongly within this film. And its premise within and of itself involving a witch is rarely talked about or really even discussed necessarily within this film, because most of the characters throughout the entire film are just kind of just talking and, maybe being paranoid about a witch, but at the same time, nothing really productive or anything even as horrifying really happening. I mean, I don't see how this film is any way, shape, or form scary. It is not scary. There's nothing scary about this film. This film didn't make me flinch. It didn't creep me out whatsoever. There was nothing going on within this film that made me go, wow, that was kind of creepy, or that was kind of scary, or that was actually kind of really creative how they approached it here and here and there. No, nothing. And it was just a big disappointment, especially when I was recommended by somebody to see this film. So yeah, it's definitely one of those projects that's just, it's definitely one that I think got more praise from the critics. But I think, you know, when just because the critics praise it, I mean, it doesn't mean you have to necessarily enjoy it or find any thing interesting from it. And that's sort of my position on it. I don't see how the critics can see really anything in this film. I can understand why they think there's certain amounts of symbolism to it, but still at the same time, that doesn't make your film deep or interesting or entertaining or engaging to watch. So yeah, I think that's just though my honest opinion. I'd be more than happy to hear what anybody else has to say, but this was an honest disappointment for me, and I think it received really a half and half review from general audience moviegoers. So it just goes to show you, like, sometimes even if the critics give it a significantly good review, it doesn't necessarily reflect onto uh, general people who like to go and watch movies. But that's just all I think I can say, though. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.